Nearly 100,000 rescue workers are racing against time in their search for survivors from Monday's devastating earthquakes in southern Turkey. Several thousand victims have already been pulled out of the rubble as freezing temperatures and bad weather set in, making rescue attempts even more challenging. International aid teams from dozens of countries are already on the ground as thousands of tons of aid and supplies make their way to the hardest hit areas. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived in the epicenter of Kahramanmaras, where he addressed rescue workers and officials overseeing recovery operations.
Bütün imkanlarımızı seferber ettik.
We have mobilized all our resources. The state is working with municipalities, especially Afad, with all its means.
President Erdogan said that Turkey faces its biggest disaster since the 1939 Erzincan earthquake, with the death toll rising every hour and time running out. Teams are racing to save as many lives as they can. Early on Wednesday, a one-year-old baby was pulled from the rubble in Şanlıurfa. Another 6-year-old girl was also saved after being trapped in a collapsed building for 47 hours.
Slow down, slow down, slow down. Thank God.
And now to discuss ongoing relief efforts in the region. Joining me now from Istanbul is Durmus Aydin. He is the Secretary General of Turkiye's Humanitarian Relief Foundation. Durmus, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Earthquake survivors woke up freezing temperatures as they tried to cope with the aftermath of the earthquake. And the death toll is unfortunately climbing every hour. Have you seen anything like this before?
Thank you very much, first of all, for having me. We never seen such a big disaster before. We have been in Haiti, we have been in Nepal, we have been in other countries, and lastly, we have been in Izmir and Elazığ. But this is something different. And what it makes difference is that the 9 provinces, I cannot speak about just one area. Mm-hmm. It is affected like a huge area. And we are talking about 9-10 provinces, and we are talking about thousands of houses are demolished and roads are collapsed and bridges are collapsed. So it is never seen before by IHH or our team before.
So where do we stand in terms of search and rescue operations?
Yeah, in earthquake, especially the 72 hours are so important. Mm-hmm. So now we are running out of time. Now we are the day of the 3rd. Now our search and rescue teams try to survive the people who are under rubbles. So it is really harsh. And the other thing is the weather conditions. Yes. It's so cold, and the people are really tired at the moment. And the time is really passing fast. And the efforts, not just IHH, the other organizations, the government organizations, the state, they are doing their best. But the problem is, as I said, it's not just about 10 or 100 buildings. I'm talking about thousands of buildings, which we need to take care of it.
So you say the first 72 hours is very, very crucial for survivors. But how many more people are believed to be still stuck under the rubble? Can you make any estimates?
It is really hard to make some estimates, but we can talk about the thousands of people.
So how?
It's really sad.
It is indeed. How long would you anticipate this search and rescue phase to last when you, as you've mentioned, consider freezing temperatures that these areas are currently under?
From our experience point of view, we never lose the hope. From Izmir, from Elazığ, we have seen that 5 days later, 4 days later, we have reached the people under the rubbles who are survived. So I'm always saying that, until we reach the last rock of or stone of the rubbles, we will do our best to survive the people, rescue the people. So, but from the experiences, sometimes 7 days later, 5 days later, people, they were survived under the rubble.
Yes.
So it is really hard, but we never lose the hope.
Yes, we consider them as miracles. But so tell us, how are people surviving under rubble? Is there enough support?
The thing is, if you look at it from the past, Turkey is now improved in terms of disaster management. Like if you compare to Marmara earthquake in 1999, now we have more search and rescue teams, and by the director of disaster management also, they did many exercises, and then they did many preparations. And each and every city, disaster management of AFAD, they organize and open the branches for the preparation of disasters. So now, really, we have improved last 20 years. So I can say that, it is, when we look at the magnitude of the earthquake and the area which is so wide, and it's not easy to handle. That's why the Turkish state announced that, declare state of emergency with the level of 3, which means Turkey is calling all international community and states to help for those people who are victimized by the earthquake.
So, as you've mentioned, President Erdogan also yesterday declared a state of emergency. What difference will it make, and how will it boost the rescue efforts moving forward?
First of all, it is giving us intention that the disaster capacity and disaster effect is so huge. So which means all the work should be done with a careful manner. So the declaration of this thing is it makes the work much more easier, because otherwise, it is very hard to control everything. So it gives the power to state that they can handle, or they can ask for anything from the companies, from the people, where they need.
So in the meantime, Durmus, 9,000 soldiers have been dispatched to the stricken areas. Are they likely to add momentum to these efforts, or are we already out of time?
No, definitely they will be very effective, because those the soldiers and search and rescue teams are trained people. They are not like the others, like that. They are not the ordinary people or the ordinary staff. So they are well trained, and then they know how to deal with the rebels. They know how to deal with the victim people. So that's really crucial, and it is really a good step that the soldiers. And also the other thing is declaring the state of emergency. It is giving authority to the state to call the soldiers also. That's why now we can see the more soldiers on the disaster areas. So it's going to be more helpful. It's going to be more organized.
So how are children, elderly people, people with disabilities are coping with the harsh weather conditions? I mean, how are they being taken care of?
Yeah, these are the most vulnerable community at the moment who are affected by the earthquake. And as I said, because of the cold, the people they need, especially those vulnerable people, they need the places to stay. They need tents, they need blankets, they need the baby diapers. Anything it's going to help them to survive from the cold. And the government already announced that people can stay in the school, in the mosque, in sport halls, or in the hotels. Also, Minister of Foreign Affairs also announced that all the hotels will be open in Antalya. So those people are most affected. And then, as much as possible, the NGOs and the state are trying to protect those people.
So how are the international search and rescue missions going? I mean, are they bringing more help?
Absolutely. Now we have seen that, already 77 countries, they announced that they're going to be coming and helping for the areas where the disaster happened. It's crucial because, as you know, Turkey also is a kind of pioneer country. If something happened, any disaster happened around the world, Turkey sends its teams for those disaster areas. So now it is time for other countries to be united with Turkey and come intervene in the disaster areas.
So thousands of Turkish volunteers are registering at the Istanbul International Airport in hopes of going to the earthquake-affected regions. What kind of a difference could they make?
But first of all, I must tell you this. In disaster area, in the first 72 hours, the professional way should be take place. That's why the search and rescue teams are very well-trained people. and then they are accredited by the IHH. And the volunteers in the second phase, they cannot go inside the rubble. They cannot go the areas where the buildings are collapsed. But they can give up backup for the people who are working on the rubbles and who are working on the buildings. But it should be also very careful that instead of helping, it might be exactly the opposite. It might give it damage also. So it should be in balance.
Yes, they just want to do their best to help those people in the region. We see there's a sense of unity and solidarity. How are Turkish people mobilizing on the ground?
It's really people, they are keen to move to the cities at the moment. We have seen at Sabiha Gökçen Airport, thousands of people being volunteered. Another thing is, in the neighboring cities of those affected disaster provinces, there are thousands of people. They are trying to bring relief items, and they are trying to be volunteers to help for those people who are trying to rescue the victim people, victimized people. So it's really there is a huge and deep sensitiveness and the feelings that those people, especially neighboring cities, are trying to help for those people in the cities.
All right, Durmus, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And now for more on the devastating quakes that hit southern Turkey and the extent of the damage, I'm joined by David Alexander from Florence. He is a professor of emergency planning and management at University College London. And Kenan Akbayram, he is the director at the Center for Natural Disasters based in Bingol, Turkey. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Kenan, the Turkish government says 13.5 million people have been affected. That is almost close to the 17% of Turkey's population. So how devastating is the situation? I mean, is it one of the most powerful quakes Turkey has seen in decades?
Yes, it is actually. People don't really remember the 1939 earthquake, because, as you know, the telecommunications that time it wasn't that good. But I mean, there was an earthquake at Erzincan at 1939, and it was supposed to be 7.9 or 8 magnitude. But this time, yes, we very much affected. As you know, the population of Turkey is nearly 90 million, yes. And maybe 15 or 20 million people affected, because there are also some refugees around the area. And if we just add this number, maybe this will be more, I mean, the number of affected people would be more. Yes, I mean, situation is really bad. The tremor was large, not the tremors was large. And even the aftershocks was large, unfortunately. And as you see in the pictures, the building quality or building types weren't ready for this kind of earthquakes in several places. Yeah.
So we'll continue to talk about this, but David, I mean, what are your thoughts? What do you see from Italy? How do you see this devastation?
We do get several earthquakes of this magnitude or higher, into the 8s per year. However, it is uncommon for them to be coincident with large areas of dense population. That was the case in Haiti in 2010, in Pakistan in 2005, and so on. And the death tolls in such cases were large, as they eventually will be here. However, rather than the power of the shaking itself, what we're often looking at here is the effects of buildings that pancake, that collapse by complete loss of structural integrity. And that also will leave few void spaces in them where we might be able to find living victims. Quite apart from the fact that we're now out of the golden period where there are likely to be significant numbers of living victims, and we'll only be recovering a very small proportion of those who were trapped alive at the time under the rubble.
So, Kenan, you briefly mentioned, but how have aftershocks, which number around 200, if I'm not mistaken, added to the devastation, and are they likely to continue?
Unfortunately. And the biggest aftershocks maybe came already. We don't know yet, but there were three big aftershocks with 6.4, 6.5, 6.6 magnitudes. These aftershocks probably caused, actually we see some pictures of it, caused the collapse of the buildings, collapse of the, which did not collapse during the main shock.
Yes.
And there will be some more we will see in future. We are not, of course, sure about the magnitudes, but at least 1 or 2 years it will continue. I mean, the aftershocks. Of course, the magnitude of the aftershocks will be smaller in time, but anyway, it will go on 1 or 2 years, maybe more.
So, David, is there enough stress left on the fault lines that could cause another earthquake, like measuring 7 point something on the Richter scale?
Right. Firstly, so far, this seems to be a fairly classic pattern of seismic energy decay. In other words, of aftershocks that generally get smaller, punctuated by some that are larger, and indeed, as was said, they could be significantly large at any time during the next 2 years. One problem with this is that fault stress can be transferred from one fault to others in the system. We're not dealing singly with a single fault there, but we're dealing, in fact, with a system of faults where the release of stress on one fault, which we've seen in 2 major earthquakes here, plus all of the aftershocks, can transmit stress to other faults in the system. We therefore could get earthquakes with epicenters perhaps slightly different, but nevertheless in the area and perhaps significant, and that could be at any time. That would require very detailed seismological analysis to see what the stress field is actually doing and how it evolves over time.
So, Kenan, some say the earthquake displaced Turkey by 3 meters. Is that correct? And if it is, what does that mean?
In a way, it is correct, because it caused a rupture of 3.3 meters. And this is measured in the field. Right now, lots of geologists of Turkey are in the field just photographing the evidences of the rupture. And we see that after the earthquake, the maximum offset reached up to 3.3 meters. That means, in a way, yes, this is true. Considering the position of the, let's say, Arabian plate, yes, Anatolian plate moved towards southwest about 3 meters. Yes, that's true.
So, David, the area that was devastated is so vast, as we know, stretching thousands of kilometers. So what makes this earthquake different than others? And does this break make Turkey even more prone to major earthquakes?
No, I don't think it makes Turkey more prone to major earthquakes, and I don't think it's actually that different from other earthquakes in the world and in Turkey. It is different in terms of being a rather larger event than we've seen for a long time. However, in other respects, it's quite similar. I don't know what the landslide situation is in this area. I've seen pictures of landslides, much as expected, but earthquakes of this size are capable of causing up to about 20,000 landslides, as we've seen in many other parts of the world. So one would expect considerable destruction connected not merely with the initial ground rupture, and let's also remember that it isn't only just 3.3 meters of displacement, it's displacement along a fault plane that is hundreds of square kilometers in size, and that it is that, the shaking, the slippage of that, which gives us this enormously high energy. It really isn't something that you can compare to nuclear bombs, because they are concentrated releases of energy, whereas this is highly distributed over an absolutely vast plane, which slopes into the Earth's upper crust, as well as being having manifestations at the surface. But nevertheless, this is an earthquake that is quite particular because of its size and because of its coincidence with a number of urban areas, not to say also because of its coincidence with the disaster of the situation in Syria.
Unfortunately, I mean, because Syria is among the worst hit countries, I mean, it has been felt in different countries like Greece, Jordan, Iraq, Georgia, and even Armenia. So do you have any information about what's been going on in Syria?
We are hearing some very bad news. I mean, thousands of people died. And I don't think the rapture just reached there, but there's a thing we call side effects. That means the building structures or the, let's say, soil structure wasn't that good, let's say, in that regions. And this has been seen in the Mexico earthquake, like 300 kilometers away. Regions of 300 kilometers just, collapsed. I mean, I'm comparing with the rupture area. Rupture area was 300 kilometers away, but the disasters area, disasters has been seen, and this is something similar. I mean, we are seeing in Syria. At least right now, the data shows that.
Yes,
unfortunately, and the building quality is really, really bad in Syria because lots of civil engineers just visited there from our region, Eastern Turkey, in a couple years.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they have the same situation with us, unfortunately.
So, David, how have continued aftershocks hindered the flow of critical aid from Turkey to northwest Syria? I mean, on top of that, maybe we can talk about the conflict impacting aid supplies from entering the country as well.
Well, of course, we have areas of Syria under government control and areas under rebel control. It is sometimes easier, and probably is easier from what I've been hearing talking to representatives of NGOs, for NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to get into such areas than it is for government or United Nations type organizations, which can easily be blocked. Bearing in mind that there are questions, and very difficult and very fuzzy questions of sovereignty here. No external organs, agencies can work in a country without the explicit permission of the host government. When we don't quite know what the host government is, that leads to a very complex situation. But it's one that, by and large, non-governmental organizations are a little better at coping with because they're not subject to quite the same restrictions and they can often get in through the back door. So,
Kenan, the World Health Organization says up to 23 million people will be affected by this disaster. How will the region recover and what should be done moving forward?
I mean, it will take years and billions of dollars, unfortunately. And I think the most important effect is, at least for the Turkish people, is we are more aware of this, disasters right now because the region is very big, the affected region, and actually anybody just affected because of these earthquakes, because everyone has some relatives, have some friends, have some colleagues in this area. And we have to do in Turkey some site-specific seismic hazard analysis, yes. But unfortunately that we're missing, requiring so many techniques in terms of engineering, so many teams. Yes. We've been doing this in Bingol, which is another seismic gap. That means we are expecting a huge earthquake, two huge earthquakes in North Anatolian and Eastern Anatolian faults. Every city which nears to seismic gaps need to do site-specific seismic hazard analysis. We are warning the governmental organizations, municipalities about this. Yes. Hopefully, this will turn something good in future. That's what we hope.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.